all that.
Good morning. Today is September 29th, 2022. Time is approximately 10:02 Eastern Daylight Time. This is the duly called meeting of the Texas Low-Level Radioactive Waste Disposal Compact Commission. We are here today in lovely Montpelier, Vermont in the State House. To start off, we will say this many times, but it's worthy to note at the outset that we are very appreciative of the state of Vermont, all of the officials that have worked with us. We especially want to thank Commissioner Sodick for setting everything up. Had a lovely time at his house last night, so thanks to both him and Mrs. Sodick for their hospitality. This is an important meeting for us. We think it's important that we get to come to Vermont at least once a year. And it's not just for the leaves. It's for the fact that Vermont is an equal partner in our compact, and we know that. We want to give everyone in Vermont the opportunity to address us if they so choose and see how we operate and be as open and forthright about what we do with them as we are with anyone else. So with that, we will call the meeting to order. Today's meeting is being broadcast on the Zoom platform. For all of you on the Zoom link today, as we have mentioned in the past, if you would like to participate or speak at today's meeting, please use the raise your hand function, which is in the lower portion of your screen. If you'll do that when the time is right, we will recognize you. For everyone here today, if you're going to speak, we would ask that you come up to the lonely red chair right here at the end of our table, and you can address us from that vantage point. I see Vice Chairman Salzman, Commissioner Morris, Commissioner Edwards, Commissioner Sodick, and Commissioner Bradford, and I see that we have Commissioner Mundy online. So with that, we have a quorum and we can proceed with our business. I know that Commissioner June Tierney will be joining us later, but do we have any other Vermont officials today? No, you don't have to do that.
Yes, I'm Tony Lushinsky. I'm the Vermont State Nuclear Engineer. I'm not really an elected official. I am just a state employee of the state of Vermont.
Thank you, Tony. We work with Tony a lot, and he is a wonderful resource for us here in the state of Vermont, so thanks for attending. Any other elected officials? I know that we have friends here and online from TCEQ. I won't call them out by name so they can stay anonymous if they want to, but we appreciate their attendance. With that, I think we can proceed. Is there any press here today? I know that there was a recent article about Vermont Yankee in the Brattleboro newspaper, but so everyone who hasn't had a chance to read that should. It's a very good piece. Like I said, I believe we'll be joined later by Commissioner June Tierney. We will stop whenever she comes in and let her make whatever remarks she'd like to make. With that, we can move on to item 4, which is the public comment period. As a reminder, this is the general public comment period. We will also give everyone the opportunity to speak on any specific item in our agenda, but if there's anything that is of a general nature that the public would like to address us with, please let us know by using the raise your hand function or coming forward.
Karen, I'll make her a panelist. Bigger.
Ms. Haddon, I see that you've raised your hand.
She's muted.
If you would unmute yourself.
Hi, good morning. And I wish I was there with you in Vermont. I'm glad to see all of you. I'm Karen Haddon with the SEED Coalition, Sustainable Energy and Economic Development Coalition. And I wanted to address one of the import applications that you have before you this morning. And it's number 5B by Aileron. And recently, a representative of Aileron's parent company, Veolia, in your meetings admitted that there had been 38 falsifications in regarding the source of the waste that they were sending. The company was not allowed to send radioactive waste to WCS for the remainder of the fiscal year, but that was just a very short time. And now they're here with another application. TCEQ has yet to approve this current Aileron application, and therefore you, the Compact Commission, should deny this request. In fact, there should be penalties assessed by TCEQ in relation to the document falsification, and Aileron should not be allowed to dispose of any waste at WCS in the future. This case is an example why SEED Coalition believes that you, the Compact Commission, should be authorized to issue penalties as well. Detailed investigation is needed into that falsification. If lies had been told to the commission on this front, what other lies have been occurring? The commission should request and receive a full explanation of why these lies occurred. Is Alaron the only broker doing this, or do other brokers operate in this same way? Has international waste been sent to WCS under a similar guise? Have radioactive material classifications been obscured to where excessively hot materials have been disposed of without authorization at WCS? Are the inventories of volume and curies at the site accurate? And is the state getting the revenues they are due? What are TCEQ, WCS, and NRC doing to ensure that these lies are not told and future misrepresentations are not occurring? Are they coordinating with you on this front? And so I think this is a very serious circumstance. I'm not making accusations. I am, however, very much interested in getting answers to these hard questions. And I think the public deserves to know, and I appreciate you doing this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Haddon. Anyone else from the public would like to make a comment of a general nature to the commission? Seeing no other hands raised, I think that means we can move on to item 5 in our agenda. Item 5 is our applications for importation of low-level radioactive waste. Since we are in Vermont and some of you either online or in the audience may not be familiar with our process, one of our primary functions is to enter agreements with out-of-compact waste generators for the importation of waste into our state for disposal at the WCS facility in Andrews, Texas. The process that we use is there is a written application that is uniform that generators fill out. It is then submitted. We then have 100 days to take action on that. We have to wait at least 35 days for public comment, but then between 35 and 100 days, we have to take action on these import applications. So all of these applications have been before us for at least 35 days. We have a technical committee who does a report on it. The technical committee is chaired by our vice chairman, who provides us all of the technical data and then makes a recommendation for our commission on each one. So with that, we will move on to item 5A, which is the import application of DTE Energy, Fermi. And with that, I'll hand it over to the vice chairman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, attendees. The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from DTE Fermi 2. It was received July 19, 2022, and it's number 1-0358-00. In this case, Fermi is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have specifically requested authorization for Class C stable irradiated hardware, including secondary waste from cask decontamination. And those waste streams were approved by TCEQ via letter correspondence dated September 15, 2022. They have requested authorization for 300 cubic feet and a total radioactivity of 20,000 curies. The commission received no comments on this application, and that waste will originate from the state of Michigan, which is an unaffiliated state. And they have requested a one-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. And I would note that if approved, that this application will need to be treated as contingent because it exceeds the 15,000 curie limit that we've established. And with that, the technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Couple of quick explanations too for anyone who's not a regular attendee. We have a large quantity position that we take based on some issues that we've had in the past with large requests for curie volumes that would push us over a cap set in our Texas state statute of 275,000 curies. So for anything over 15,000 curies, we make that grant contingent. And by that, what we mean is that it is contingently approved, but when it's time for the actual waste to ship, they have to give us notice, which what we have found is oftentimes the Curie number goes down by that time because they have a more accurate measure of the Curies. And then it's on a first come, first served basis. So in that sense, we could grant more than 275,000 Curies on a contingent basis, and then it becomes a first come, first serve as to who gets there. The real reason we did this was because what we found was that a lot of irradiated hardware requests for importation, it's very hard to measure that Curie count when the actual application is being sent in. And so people tended to overshoot the mark. And when they overshot the mark, we would eat up our Curies, but then they would never get used because by the time of shipment, a 25,000 Curie request may turn into 5,000 Curies. So to avoid that problem of bumping up against our cap on paper, but never actually doing it in practice, we created this contingent Curie allocation process. And it has worked really well. We have actually seen that we have never hit our 275,000 Curie actual disposed, but we have gone over that allocation in the number of Curies we've granted for disposal. So it's actually working as we had hoped it would. So with that, I'll open the floor. Is there any more questions for the Vice Chairman? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from DTE Fermi 2, number 1-0358-00. The waste will be Class C. The material will be stable. It will be irradiated hardware, including secondary waste from cask decontamination. It will be 300 cubic feet. It will be 20,000 Curies that will be contingently approved. And the waste will originate from the state of Michigan, and it will be a one-year agreement with a termination date of August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. There's a motion to second. Any further discussion on item 5A, the import application of DTE Energy Fermi? Any public comment on item 5A? And again, if you're online, please use the raise your hand function. Seeing none, I think we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of DTE Energy Fermi as represented in item 5A on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. The next item on our agenda is item 5B, the import application of Aileron Nuclear Services. I'll turn it back over to the Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, the technical committee has received an import application from Veolia ES Aileron LLC, doing business as Aileron Nuclear Services. In this case, the TCEQ has not issued a certification letter approving their waste for disposal at the site. So we would be unable to recommend approval for this application.
Thank you. As a brief bit of explanation, there's currently an investigation going on with Aileron, which to Aileron's credit, they've been very forthright and very cooperative, and we appreciate all their cooperation. But because we do not have a certification letter from the TCEQ, and that does not to say that it may not happen in the future, but we just currently do not have one. As a practical matter, it wouldn't make any sense for us to even consider this today because without a certification letter, they can't dispose of the waste. So I believe, and we may look to our legal counsel, I believe the correct thing to do at this point is because of our rules that say we have to address an import application within 100 days, we have to take some action today. But I believe that action can be to simply table this motion to seek more information, which would include additional information from TCEQ on a certification letter. So let me, and I'll let everyone speak in a minute. I just want to make sure with our legal counsel, Melissa, that is the appropriate, what's the word I'm looking for?
Motion.
Procedural way to handle this.
Yeah, so under the rules, good morning, everybody. Hope you're
Morning.
doing So under the rules, yes, the board needs to take action within the 100-day period, whether that be at today's meeting or at another called meeting in October. And one of the actions could be to request more information. You also have other options from accepting, denying, or as what it seems like might be. One thing you want to consider is to get more information, and that would be the action. It wouldn't be so much a tabling, but rather an action to request more information. And
Thank you.
And I think Commissioner Mundy had a question.
Yes, so we'll start with Commissioner Mundy.
Yes, I'll say procedurally, and Ms. Juarez, you weigh in on this, but doing work in front of other bodies, administrative application proceedings, I think the term of art is that this is not a administratively complete application at this point, so it's actually not even ripe for consideration. I know our rules don't talk about that, but I see that, for example, in water applications routinely. So that's the way I view this right now. Without that certification, it's not administratively complete, not ripe for consideration.
And members, I'd be happy to address those kinds of issues further, but I would recommend doing that in closed session if you need that kind of advice or input from me.
No. And the only thing I will say in response to Commissioner Mundy is I think, and this is just a wording issue of our statute, the certification letter from TCEQ is not a statutory requirement to consider an application. It's just one of the factors we can consider, which I know is semantics to some degree, but as a practical matter, unless we have a certification letter, it doesn't make any sense to authorize the importation of waste that is not authorized to be disposed of at WCS yet. Yeah. So I think while I understand exactly what Jeff is saying, I think the wording of our statute suggests that simply saying we are going to seek more information related to the certification letter from TCEQ, and pending that, we are not going to take any other action until we receive that information. It's probably the technical way to address this issue today. Does anybody else have any comments or questions before we?
I do.
Oh,
Well,
That was me.
sorry, go ahead.
well, it's an interesting conundrum. We have to figure out some way to table this particular application. But as you mentioned in your earlier remarks, there's actually an investigation going on related to some of the prior documentation that Alaron submitted, which was a reason for us to take an action in the last meeting to deny or revoke their existing agreement for the prior fiscal year. And I just don't want it to be interpreted by our public that the fact that this is an incomplete application is the only reason that we're not taking action. If it had been complete and needed to come for a vote, then we would have to discuss the results of that investigation and factor that into any vote that we take on allowing future importation from them.
Absolutely. And I am not preordaining any suggestion about the action we should take. The action is always open to the will of the body, and that is approve, deny, or approve as modified or with the whatever parameters we put on it. So the universe of options are going to be there when we make what I would refer to as a more final decision on this. But I believe the appropriate thing at this point is to make a motion to seek additional information concerning the TCEQ certification letter and bring this matter back up at a future meeting after that information is received.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, and another thing that you may consider is whether there's additional information you need, even separate from the TCEQ letter. So, and I just mentioned that so when your motion is made, keep that in mind. There may be more than just the TCEQ information you want, but rather information relating to the application.
And I would point out, Commissioner, this is Stephen Rains, Executive Director. the importation rule requires you may not consider an application before 35 days, but you are required to act within 100 days. And we received this application, oddly enough, when we were at the meeting in Andrews. So that 100 days will expire before our next scheduled meeting.
But the action we take can be to seek more information. It does not have to be approve or deny. It can be to seek more information.
That's correct.
So with that, yes, with that, I believe I'll open the floor to a motion.
I make a motion that we table the Aileron Nuclear Services import application number 1-0359-00, pending their submittal of further information to address questions that have been brought up by our commission as well as the TCEQ to address the certification that they need before they can dispose of waste at the WCS facility.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about item 5B? Any public comment on item 5B? I think Mr. McLean has his hand up.
If you could unmute yourself, Mr. McLean, you can speak. You just need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Mr. McLean?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hey, I appreciate you taking my my request.
Did we lose him?
Request. I think I have a. Hey, so yes, recognize the need for further information. One question I do have though is, specifically the information.
Mr. McLean.
His audio is breaking up.
Yeah, it is here too.
It's cutting out and out, Mr. McLean.
Is this better?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just looking for, am I going to get something, an official request of the information that you're looking for, or?
Yes, to the extent the commission is seeking additional information, you will get, and when I say formal, something to you, either Mr. Raines will contact you or one of us will to seek that information. And to the extent you need it to be in writing, we can definitely do that as well. But I think that the line of communication we've had to this point has been really great. And like I said, we appreciate your company and how they have been cooperative in everything that we've done. So I think it will continue along those same lines. The other issue that I think was mentioned in the motion was that obviously we will seek more information from TCQ and wait to see if they issue a certification letter at a later date, which would resolve that issue, which that along with the additional information we request are the two issues that we're seeking more information on before we take a final action on the import request.
Okay, excellent, very good. I would appreciate, a letter that would help us make sure that we get you everything that you need and prepare to answer these questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. We will.
You have to provide that.
Any other public comment on item 5B? There was another hand up, I thought.
No, it's just one. That's it.
Okay, seeing no other requests for public comment, we'll move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to seek additional information concerning the import application of Aileron Nuclear Services, both information requested from the commission and information related to the PQ certification letter, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes.
Chair, can I make an additional comment on this?
Oh, we've already moved past it, so, no, but go ahead, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I still would vote aye for this. I do think it seems rather odd that we are tying consideration of the investigation simply to this new import application. The fact is, during a prior agreement, there are indications that paperwork was not properly filled out. And while the company has been quite good about coming forward and working with us to identify information, the fact remains that violations likely occurred or appear to have occurred. And we, I think as a body, should consider that as a standalone issue related to this company's access for this import application or any other future import application. And I don't know that that has been made clear in our discussions thus far. But from my perspective, even if they didn't have even if this company did not have an import application in front of us today, their prior behavior warrants consideration for some kind of action related to that behavior, a formal decision.
Address that, Brandon?
No. Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Any other comments before we move on? We can move on then to item 5C, which is the import application of RAM services. I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Chairman, I didn't call you out. I'm sorry.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from RAM Services, Inc. It was received July 22nd, 2022, and it's number 1-0360-00. In this case, RAM Service is a broker who is a licensed waste collector and processor requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have specifically requested authorization for Class A, Class B, and Class C stable sealed sources and industrial devices in concrete. And those waste streams were approved for disposal at the WCS facility via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated September 15, 2022. They have requested authorization for 90 cubic feet and 192 curies. The commission has received no comments on this application. And they have indicated that the waste will originate from all compacts excluding the Northwest Compact and including the following unaffiliated states and the district, which is including Michigan, Nebraska, New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maine, North Carolina, and Washington, D.C. And I would note that any waste that would be shipped from the Southwestern or Rocky Mountain compacts will require an export authorization. And to date, they have not provided the export authorizations or generator authorizations. And they have requested an agreement for a one-year period with the termination date of August 31, 2023. They've also indicated that the waste will be coming from small quantity generators, and based on the requested volume, curies, and generator types, the commission concurs so long as any of the waste from a utility does not include a nuclear utility. With that, the technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the Vice Chairman on item 5C, the import application of RAM services? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from RAM Services, Inc., number 1-0360-00. The waste class is Class A, Class B, and Class C. The waste form is stable. The waste stream is sealed sources and industrial devices in concrete. The volume is 90 cubic feet. The radioactivity is 192 curies. The waste will originate from all compacts excluding the Northwest Compact and including Michigan, Nebraska, New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maine, North Carolina, and Washington, D.C. And the RAM Services will need to provide any required export authorizations and generator authorizations via correspondence with our administration in no more than 4 packets of information. This waste will be considered under a small quantity generator set aside, and the agreement will be for a one-year period terminating August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion concerning the import application of RAM services represented in item 5C on our agenda? Any public comment on item 5C? Hearing none, we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of RAM services as described in the Vice Chairman's motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We now move on to item 5D, the first import application of the Tennessee Valley Authority. And I'll turn it back over to the Vice Chairman.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from the Tennessee Valley Authority dated July 16, 2022, or received July 16, 2022, July 26, sorry. It's number 1-0361-00. In this case, TVA is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They are requesting authorization for Class A, Class B, and Class C unstable dewatered bead and/or Powdex resin, sources, filters, and compactable and non-compactable trash. And those waste streams were approved for disposal at the WCS site via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated September 15, 2022. They have requested authorization from 12,500 cubic feet and 1,260 curies. The commission has received no comments on this application. The waste will originate from Alabama and Tennessee, which are part of the Southeast Compact and do not require export authorization. And they have requested a one-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. The technical committee recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
John, do you know why these are split into two applications? Because this is not irradiated hardware, right?
So I believe the next one
Is irradiated?
is
Sorry.
without looking at the next one yet, I think it is.
Okay. Any other
Yes.
questions for the technical committee? Here, now we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from Tennessee Valley Authority number 1-0361-00. The waste class is Class A, Class B, and Class C. The waste form is unstable. The waste stream is dewatered bead and/or Powdex resin, sources, filters, and compactable and non-compactable trash. The volume is 12,500 cubic feet. The curies are 1,260. The waste will originate from Alabama and Tennessee, and the agreement will be for a one-year period terminating August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about, or any discussion about the motion to approve the first import application of the Tennessee Valley Authority represented in item 5D? Commissioner Sadick.
I guess it strikes me as strange that you've got a waste volume of 12,500 and it's A, B, and C, and the radioactivity is only 1,260.
My suspicion is that they'll be shipping some probably relatively low activity Class A waste, probably from an outage or something like that. But apparently that waste is not able to go to the RCRA facility, so they'll have to ship it in as Class A material.
I guess the fact they designated A, B, and C and then has such a low curie count is kind of odd.
But it also includes resins, and it's quite possible that the resins that they'll be shipping could actually be the majority of those curies, and those could easily be Class C. So the trash is probably really low level Class A, but the resins could be all the way to Class C.
If you look at the next one coming up, it's the flip situation, small volume, really hot. So it's just kind of how I think they're probably arbitrarily breaking it out.
Right. Any other questions for the technical committee? Any public comment on item 5D? Hearing none, we'll move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the first import application of the Tennessee Valley Authority represented in item 5D on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We will now move on to the second import application of the Tennessee Valley Authority represented in item 5E on our agenda, and I'll turn it back over to our vice chairman.
The technical committee has received an import application from Tennessee Valley Authority, again, July 26, 2022. In this case, it's number 1-0362-00. And again, TVA is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the act. In this case, they have requested authorization for Class C unstable irradiated hardware, and that waste stream was approved for disposal by TCEQ via letter correspondence dated September 15, 2022. And as was noted just a moment ago, the volume is actually quite low in this one, 400 cubic feet, but the radioactivity is 75,000 curies, which is makes sense based on the waste stream being irradiated hardware.
For some reason, that makes me feel better.
I suspect it makes WCS feel better too. The commission again received no comments on this application. In this case, the waste will only originate from the state of Alabama, which is located in the Southeast Compact and does not require export authorization. And they again have requested a one-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. And as I noted on a previous application, since these requested curies exceed our 15,000 curie limit, it'll have to be treated as contingent if approved. The technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
John, so with this 75,000, we will go above our 275 cap, right, in contingently granted curies?
That is correct.
So there's a prime example of what we described earlier. So our disposal year runs until August of next year. So we are already at our 275. So we are in the first come, first serve mode. And again, I'm always afraid I confuse this issue. If curies are not granted on a contingent basis, in other words, for non-irradiated hardware, those grants are permanent and actual. That's not a first come, first served basis. It's only the contingently granted curies that become a first come, first served basis. Any other questions for the vice chairman? Hearing none, we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from Tennessee Valley Authority, number 1-0362-00. The waste class is Class C. The waste form is unstable. The waste stream is irradiated hardware. The volume is 400 cubic feet. The contingent curies will be 75,000. The waste will originate from the state of Alabama, and it will be a one-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about item 5E, the second import application from the TVA? I know that there's one person that already has their hand up, so I will call on Ms. Haddon for her comment as well.
I'm sorry, just briefly, can somebody explain what in this case the irradiated hardware is? Are we talking about control rods? What metal, what are we talking about here? It's really, really hot.
Do you know, John?
I do not know specifically what irradiated hardware they will be shipping. Generally, with any irradiated hardware, it is primarily metal and it's steel, and it has lots of cobalt-60 in it. It also will have some carbon-14 and some other isotopes, nickel, not nickel-63, maybe it is. And there's another, some strontium. There'll be a variety, but the primary reason for the activity being so high is cobalt-60.
It says, Vice Chairman, it says in their waste description that there are control rod blades and there are core plate plugs. Are included in their waste description.
So Ms. Haddon, in answer to your question, yes, it will be control rod blades.
Seems to me that should be, according to the NRC, used to be handled as waste similar to spent nuclear fuel that had to go in special containers and be treated. You know, often it's referred to as high-level radioactive waste, but you know, it's that's incredibly hot. I'm wondering about this one.
I would note that it is going to be very high in activity, but I would also note that TCEQ has reviewed and approved this waste stream for disposal at the site. So they've reviewed the waste stream in accordance with the NRC mandated criteria, and their letter means that it is within the definition of low-level waste.
Ms. Haddon, also, this is due to activation, not fuel. So it's not the fuel, there's no fuel involved, it's simply activation by the neutrons of the metal.
Yeah, it is not high-level waste. It is a suitable waste stream, and this is typical of irradiated hardware. It often contains spent control rod blades, and it is of high activity.
Well, I'm really concerned about it, but thank you for your answers.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none, we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the second import application of the Tennessee Valley Authority represented in item 5E on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. With that, we can move on to item 5F, which is the import application of Xcel Energy Monticello. And I'll turn it back over to the technical committee.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from Xcel Energy Monticello Nuclear Generating Plant. It was received July 27th, 2022, and it's number 1-0364-00. In this case, Monticello is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have requested authorization for Class A and Class B unstable, depleted, powdered, and bead ion exchange resin, canister filters, DAW trash, hydrogen oxygen recombiner, and hydrogen oxygen recombiner catalyst. And those waste streams were approved for disposal via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated September 15, 2022. They have requested authorization for 2,150 cubic feet and 870 curies. This waste, the commission has received no comments on this import application. The waste will originate from the state of Minnesota, which is located in the Midwest Compact. It does not require export authorization. And they have requested a one-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. And also note in their application, they indicated that the waste was from a small quantity generator. However, the commission never considers a nuclear power facility to be a small quantity generator. That could have been an administrative mistake when they filled out the application, but in any case, it will not be considered as a small quantity generator. The technical committee recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the technical committee? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from Xcel Energy Monticello Nuclear Generating Plant, number 1-0364-00. The waste class is Class A and Class B. The waste form is unstable. The waste stream is depleted, powdered, and bead ion exchange resin, canister filters, DAW trash, and hydrogen oxygen recombiner catalyst. The volume is 2,150 cubic feet. The radioactivity is 870 curies. The waste will originate from the state of Minnesota, and the agreement will be for a one-year period with a termination date of August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about item 5F on our agenda, the import application of Xcel Energy? Any public comment on item 5F? Seeing no hands raised, we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of Xcel Energy represented in item 5F on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We can now move on to item 5G, the import application of Southern Vogtle Nuclear Power Plant. And I will turn it back over to the Vice Chairman.
Give me just one moment so I can get to the right spot. The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from Southern Nuclear Vogtle Electric Generating Plant 1 and 2. It was received August 11, 2022, and it's number 1-0365-00. In this case, Vogel is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the act. They have specifically requested authorization for Class B and Class C unstable resin and/or filters, and those waste streams were approved for disposal at the site via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated September 15, 2022. They've requested authorization for 640 cubic feet and 640 curies. This waste will originate from the state of Georgia, which the applicant actually indicated was unaffiliated, which is incorrect. That's part of the Southeast Compact and does not require export authorization. The commission received no comments on this application, and they have requested a one-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. The technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on item 5G?
Is it just coincidence that,
I noticed that too.
that the waste volume and the radioactivity happen to be the
Exact same number?
I believe it is just coincidence. I went back and specifically looked at their application to ensure that myself, because when I put it into my form, I sort of did a double take because that's pretty unusual, but that's what they listed in their application.
And also that it's B and C, which I would normally expect that the radioactivity would be higher than the.
Based on the waste stream of resins and filters, it doesn't surprise me that it would potentially just B and C. It would depend. They didn't go into detail about which resins it is, but my suspicion is this is probably primary resins.
Filters easily go into Class C territory too, with a very small volume and relatively small amount of activity, because it's on such a small volume. The filters can become Class C pretty easily.
John, when you get a application with an error in it, like no authorization required, do you let them know? Do they correct it, or do we approve it so they've got it right?
In the case of they check the small quantity generator box, I don't go back and tell them. The very first time it happened that I did, and then I've noticed it happens occasionally. I think it's people when they're going through the application, they accidentally check a box and don't realize what they're doing.
Because it's an online form and they're clicking as they go through.
They're clicking boxes, and I know with me, you could be going through filling something out and you accidentally, you don't even realize you've clicked and you click and that's it. This one indicating that Georgia was unaffiliated, that's a little more unusual. I did not, in fact, go back and inform them, but perhaps it's a new person.
Yeah, might be just as I was thinking of Lisa's concern earlier about Aileron, just to encourage good behavior.
So, Stephen, if you could let Vogel know that, in fact, they are part of the Southeast Compact, whether they know it or not.
We try and correct it when we.
I dare say Southern.
Southern may, this individual may not.
Commissioner Bever, we try to, when we see obvious errors in their applications before they're even forwarded. Matter of fact, there's one coming up that had an error that we asked them to correct it and resubmit. So as they change their own applications when they are in error, but with this, we didn't go back and force them to change that because we know that's incorrect. But if there are substantive errors that would be incorrect to mislead the commission in the decision-making process, we would make sure and correct that and have them.
Anytime to ask for corrections or additional, a question because something they put in didn't make sense. So we'd have to get a clarifying question.
It probably didn't really have an impact in this situation since they don't require.
That's.
But if they had been in one that required, that would have been a bigger issue.
Right.
But when we approve it with these changes, they are notified of the approval and that they're not a small quantity generator.
Yes.
And that they are.
That's correct.
In fact, so even if it wasn't done in the preliminary process, what they receive approval for indicates all the right information.
That's correct.
Including in this case, we did.
It'll be correct in the agreement that they sign before Chairman Hurley sends it to them with his signature.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably all that's required for this one.
Right.
So as Linda said, if it did require approval then, and we didn't catch it, then it would be more significant.
More often, Commissioner Bradford, is if they put the wrong waste streams in, or they miss the classification, or they don't put it to irradiated hardware, we'll try and catch that and fix it long before it reaches the stage that it would come to a vote before you.
I have sort of a follow-on question for that. If they did in fact mean to write 6,400 curies instead of 640, when they go to actually ship it, they have an import permit for the volume and for a certain number of curies. If their curies exceed what has been approved,
They can't ship.
they can't ship.
They'd have to seek an amendment.
Okay.
And that has happened.
Yeah.
I won't say many times, but it has happened. We don't process as many amendments as we used to, but through the course of the site being open, we've had a number of amendments where the applicant made an error that we couldn't tell it was an error, but in many cases it was the volume or the curies, and they had to come back and request more for one or both.
Well, we can also mention, while we've got everybody here, we have a minor amendment that we have to consider right now. Someone forgot to list a state in their list on their application. And that's a minor amendment that doesn't require the commission to approve that, to add a state that's unaffiliated to change their amendment. But we have had on occasion where they've put the wrong classification for the waste, put A and B when they needed to include C, and it's become a problem. As a matter of fact, often WCS will catch it later when they're ready to ship to WCS. If they do not have the correct agreement, WCS will notify them that they need to come get an amendment from the commission because they don't have the proper agreement in place for them to be able to ship to WCS and for disposal. And I know that's happened on a few occasions. Mr. Carlson can probably speak to it more accurately from his end, but occasionally that becomes an issue.
Any other questions for the technical committee? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the import application from Southern Nuclear Vogtle Electric Generating Plant 1 and 2, number 1-0365-00. The waste class is Class B and Class C. The waste form is unstable. The waste stream is resin and/or filters. The volume is 640 cubic feet. The total radioactivity is 640 curies. The waste will originate from Georgia. And the agreement will be for a one-year period terminating August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion about item 5G? Any public comment on item 5G? No hands raised. We will move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of Southern Vogtle Nuclear Power Plant represented in item 5G in our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. Motion passes. And I saw that, I believe Commissioner Tierney just walked in. So let's stop what we're doing and welcome her and thank her very much for her city's hospitality and ask her to come say a few words.
Thank you so much. Shall I sit here?
Absolutely. It's your house, so you can sit wherever you want.
Well, let's straighten a few things out. First, I am June Tierney, Commissioner of the Department of Public Service. This morning, I have the pleasure of being here on behalf of Governor Scott. I've come running from a meeting. I am desperate for a way to make clear that Governor Scott would be here but for. Thank you so much, Don. Good to go. He's in the midst of meeting with our transmission company here to make sure that we are all in our game, preparing for winter reliability, and that's an important thing to do too. With that said, this is not my house. It is the legislature's house, and it is a privilege to be here. More importantly, perhaps, it's a privilege to see all of you folks from Texas here. Really appreciate the effort it takes and the personal risk, frankly, at this point, of coming this way to be part of our compact here and to reciprocate. I've had the pleasure in my time of traveling to Texas in order to participate in this program. And I can say that at a time in our country where we're really struggling, I think, to remember why we are 50 states joined in one country, these are the kinds of connective tissue activities that give me great faith that America is still America, and that with all our differences, we do come together to deal with our challenges and our needs. And this compact is a perfect example of that. Both states have a need to find a repository for their low-level radioactive waste. And Senator Leahy, I think, had a major role in creating this compact, or at least facilitating Vermont's participation in it. And so when he, the Dean of the Senate, tells you in public venues that the Senate is broken, that is heart-wrenching. But to see his work continue and to work so well is encouraging. So we do thank you for making the time to come here to our state. I wish you had come maybe a week later. You would see, no, my personal schedule would clean up more, but you would see our foliage at its absolute best. But I know that given how this compact works, you will be back again, and we will be sure to put on a better show for you then. I may ask the Vermont delegates, is there anything in particular that you'd like me to speak to today, or are there questions I perhaps can answer?
We've already covered the foliage.
Let's cover how it came to be that you put on a suit and a tie today, Dick. There's no badge of honor for you folks.
I don't know. I think it's important to deliver the message to Texas generally, not to the Texans on this commission, but that the kind of joint quality of this commission and the fact that Vermont values its participation greatly and is grateful that there is a safe repository in Texas that's available to Vermont, which and that would have been very difficult for Vermont to provide if Vermont Yankee were being pulled apart right now and buried in Vermont. That would be a tough thing to do, to understate the problem, but.
It's a really interesting point, Dick, and here's why. Because on a level, I completely agree with you, and we are grateful to have the compact, and we're grateful for the prescience exhibited by earlier people who bore these responsibilities to put something like this together. Being an old Army person, I have a real fondness for things that connect the country. And this kind of interdependency is a big thing for us. I would be remiss if I did not remark at this time on how some of our cultural zeitgeist is changing a little bit. And increasingly there are people who are asking, is it right, is it good to take waste from one part of the country and put it in another part of the country? But what I would say to that is, it is necessary in many respects, because it is not a light thing to dispose of low-level radioactive waste. And the fact is that there is an investment that's been made in the facilities that Texas has. The investment from Vermont was considerable, $25 million many years ago, which in today's dollars is significantly more. And it is important to unlock and realize the benefit of that investment and to do so safely. As, in my opinion, we do in that facility, having visited it myself and seen for myself that it is a well-run facility. But you have, I think, perhaps inadvertently teed up a very important contemporary question, which is, what is the future of these kinds of arrangements? And I don't know, because I don't want to take that for granted. The sensibilities of today's years may be different from what they were 50 years ago. I'm something of a throwback. So I don't know that people are going to be asking me necessarily But for what we have right now, we are deeply grateful. And I say that on Governor Scott's behalf, just as we are deeply grateful for the service that you and Peter give to the state in participating as equal partners. I think it's mildly, if it weren't such a serious subject, I would say it's mildly funny to see one of the largest states in the country conjoined with one of the smallest states in the country in order to make a whole for the two of us that we both need. And it pleases me greatly. As I know firsthand, having sat with your colleagues in Texas and knowing the work of these gentlemen, you benefit from our questions and from our critique and our incisiveness, just as we benefit from your ability and willingness to post where we cannot post, and to do so as competently as you do. So I hope I have served my purpose here today. If nothing else, my purpose was to make sure you understood that what you do is deeply appreciated, folks from Texas. What you do is deeply appreciated, folks from Vermont. And I really do pay attention to it all, so Governor Scott knows what you're doing and Christmas is coming.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Tierney. On behalf of the Texas delegation, I will tell you, this is the highlight of our year. We love coming, whether the leaves are changing or not. We always look forward to going to Dick's house. So this is a wonderful trip for us. And we consider Vermont very much our equal partner in this matter. And we always intend to proceed as such. And we will never take for granted the fact that we have a wonderful partner in Vermont. So we appreciate it.
That's very gracious of you. And I can tell you, these two gentlemen will never let you take that for granted. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Sorry I have to leave you now, though.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Bobby wanted to say something. He's gone. He put his hand down.
I've served with the throwback. I've served with the throwback.
So back to our agenda, we can now move on to item 5H, which is the import application of Ameren, Missouri, and I will turn it back over to the Vice Chairman.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from Ameren, Missouri, that I'll refer to as Callaway. It was received August 12, 2022, and it's number 1-0366-00. In this case, Callaway is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have requested authorization for Class A, Class B, and Class C unstable resins, filters, and DAW, and those waste streams were approved for disposal at the site via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated July 15, 2022. They have requested authorization for 1,000 cubic feet and 300 curies. I would note that the commission has received no comments on this application. And the waste will originate from the state of Missouri, which is located in the Midwest Compact and does not require export authorization. And they have requested a one-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. The technical committee recommends approval, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on item 5H? Hearing none, we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from Ameren, Missouri, Callaway, number 1-0366-00. The waste class is Class A, Class B, and Class C. The waste form is unstable. The waste stream is resins, filters, and DAW. The volume is 1,000 cubic feet. The radioactivity is 300 curies. The waste will originate from Missouri, and this will be for a one-year period within a termination date of August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about item 5H, the import application of Ameren, Missouri? Any public comment on item 5H? Seeing no hands raised, we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of Ameren, Missouri, represented in item 5H on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We can now move on to item 5I, which is the import application of CNC Environmental, and I'll turn it back over to the Vice Chairman.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from CNC Environmental that was received August 12, 2022, and it's number 1-0367-00. In this case, C&C Environmental is a broker who is a licensed waste processor requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have requested authorization for Class A, Class B, and Class C stable sealed sources and devices, and that waste stream was approved for disposal via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated September 15, 2022. They have requested authorization for 60 cubic feet and 100 curies. They have noted, I would note that the commission received no comments on this application. The applicant has indicated that the waste will originate from the Northwest Compact, the Rocky Mountain Compact, the Southwestern Compact, and DOD installations in the U.S. from unaffiliated states. So I would note that any waste from the Northwest, Southwestern, or Rocky Mountain Compacts will generally require an export authorization. When I say generally, the Southwestern and Rocky Mountains Compacts specifically require export authorization. The Northwest Compact asks that entities seeking to ship waste out of their compact would seek authorization, but there is no specific rule in place in the Northwest Compact to require that an export authorization be requested. To date, the applicant has not provided export authorizations or generator authorizations. There was no comments were received on this one. The applicant has asked for a one-year agreement with a termination date of August 31, 2023. And in this case, they've also indicated that the waste would be from small quantity generators. However, because the waste, in my opinion, because the waste is coming from Department of Defense, I don't think that's an appropriate small quantity generator. The Department of Defense has a great technical expertise, and that's one of the reasons why we created the small quantity generator set aside, was to allow entities that perhaps don't have the wherewithal for a complete waste program. And in this case, Department of Defense has plenty of wherewithal. So this will not be considered under a small quantity generator set aside. The technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for John on the import application of C&C Environmental in item 5I? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from C&C Environmental number 1-0367-00. The waste class is Class A, Class B, and Class C. The waste form is stable. The waste stream is sealed sources and devices. The volume is 60 cubic feet. The radioactivity is 100 curies. The waste will originate from the Northwest, Rocky Mountain, Southwest Compact, and other DOD installations in unaffiliated states. The C&C will have to provide to our administrative support group the export authorizations and generator authorizations in no more than 4 submittals. And the agreement will be for a one-year period terminating August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion about item 5I, the import application of C&C Environmental? Public comment on item 5I? Seeing no hands raised, we will move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of C&C Environmental represented in item 5I in our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We will now move on to item 5J, the import application of Duke Energy Harris. And I will turn it back over to the Vice Chairman.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application for Duke Energy Harris Nuclear Plant that was received August 17, 2022, and it's number 1-0368-00. In this case, Duke Harris is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have requested authorization for Class A and Class B unstable DAW high activity filters and dewatered bead resin, and those waste streams were approved for disposal at the site via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated September 15, 2022. They have requested authorization for 2,500 cubic feet and 20 curies, which is unusual. The technical committee received no comments on this application. The waste will originate from the state of North Carolina, which is an unaffiliated state. And they have requested, I believe, a one-year agreement with the termination date of August 31, 2023. The technical committee recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on the import application of Duke Energy Harris? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from Duke Energy Harris Nuclear Plant number 1-0368-00. The waste class is Class A and Class B. The waste form is unstable. The waste stream is DAW, high activity filters and dewatered bead resin. The volume is 2,500 cubic feet and the radioactivity is 20 curies. The waste will originate from the state of North Carolina and the agreement will be for a one-year period terminating August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Item 5J, the import application of Duke Energy Harris. Any public comment on item 5J? Seeing no hands raised, we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application request of Duke Energy Harris represented in item 5J on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. Motion passes. The next one is item 5K, the import application of Duke Energy Brunswick. That I'll turn it back over to John.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from Duke Energy Brunswick that was received August 22nd, 2022, and it's number 1-0369-00. In this case, Duke Brunswick is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have requested authorization for Class C unstable, non-fuel irradiated metal. And that waste stream was approved for disposal at the site via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated September 15, 2022. They have requested authorization for 175 cubic feet and 39,000 curies. The commission received no comments on this application. Again, the waste will originate from North Carolina, which is an unaffiliated state. And they have requested an agreement for a one-year period that would terminate August 31, 2023. And in this case, since the application, again, exceeds our 15,000 curie limit, any approval will have to be the curies will have to be treated as a contingent approval. The technical committee recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from Duke Energy Brunswick, number 1-0369-00. The waste class is Class C. The waste form is unstable. The waste stream is non-fuel irradiated metal. The volume is 175 cubic feet. The radioactivity is 39,000 curies. The waste will originate from North Carolina, and the agreement will be for a one-year period terminating August 31, 2023, and this will be a contingent curie approval.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion about the import application of Duke Energy Brunswick represented in item 5K? Any public comment on item 5K? Now we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of Duke Energy Brunswick represented in item 5K on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. Motion passes. And our final import request is item 5L, which is the import application of GE Hitachi Energy Americas. And I will turn it back over one last time to the Vice Chairman.
The technical committee has received and reviewed an import application from GE Hitachi Nuclear Energy Americas. It's number 1-0370-00, and it was received August 23, 2022. GE Hitachi is a generator requesting authorization to dispose of waste in accordance with the Act. They have requested authorization for Class A, Class B, and Class C stable and unstable, low-activity mixed waste, HEPA filters, and demolition debris in both containerized and bulk waste disposal. Those waste streams were approved for disposal at the site via letter correspondence from TCEQ dated September 15, 2022. In this case, they've requested authorization for 15,000 cubic feet and a total radioactivity of 500 curies. The commission received no comments on this application, and GE has indicated that the waste will originate from the Southwestern Compact, which will require export authorization, which has not been provided to date. And they have requested a one-year agreement with a termination date of August 31, 2023. And they also indicated a potential renewal option. In this case, I would note that that's not how this commission operates. So if they want to go for an additional agreement or an additional year, they'll have to apply for a new agreement. So this agreement would terminate August 31, 2023. The technical committee recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on item 5I, the import application of GE Hitachi?
Do you know the facility?
I do not. I was, as I was reading through, I thought GE Hitachi, this is the first import application we've received from them. And I was reading through, I was curious, the Southwestern Compact, but it did not specifically indicate where in the Southwestern Compact.
We don't get a lot of vendor applications.
No, we don't. So I actually don't have a lot more information about this.
It says industrial academic / research.
And it says also under the compact, it says generated by mainly research operations with some commercial electricity production generation.
Their facility is located, at least their address is listed in Sunol, SUNOL, California. So.
And
Southwest?
That's in California, so somewhere.
California.
I don't know.
And if they indicated power generation, I'm sort of scratching my head thinking from where?
Yeah.
Vallecitos?
Commercial.
That's what they list.
I'm not aware there's anything on the grid there.
Right, but some industries. Oh, I think Dave has the answer.
Yeah, GE Vallecitos is a GE nuclear research facility that had, I believe, the first PWR in the country is the GE PWR that's on that site. I believe at some point in history they were hooked up to the grid. So they have both shut down and operating reactors at that site. Several of them.
They had a pretty serious accident, which is why I think it's not on the grid anymore.
Well, they're very small reactors too. So they were developed as research reactors, and academic as indicated. I believe one of those reactors is probably still licensed for operation. One of the others are shut down.
Presumably so.
Just out of curiosity, I don't know that you have to be connected to the grid to be considered commercial operation if you are supplying energy to the site.
Could be self-sure.
Yeah.
I would agree. I don't think they have to be connected to the grid. It was unusual.
Yeah.
And again, this is the first time we've received an application from GE Hitachi.
Any other questions of the technical committee? No, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the import application from GE Hitachi Nuclear Energy Americas, number 1-0370-00. The waste class is Class A, Class B, and Class C. The waste form is stable and unstable. The waste stream is low activity mixed waste, HEPA filters, and demolition debris in both containerized and bulk waste disposal. The volume is 15,000 cubic feet. The radioactivity is 500 curies. The waste will originate from the southwestern compact, and they will be required to provide an export authorization to our administrative staff before they can ship the waste. And the agreement will be for a one-year period terminating August 31, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second,
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Kathy Davis. has-
Yes, I see Ms. Davis.
Oh, I muted her, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kathy, did you have something you wanted to say?
I accidentally muted you, Kathy. This is Stephen.
Yeah, you may have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was trying to get through and I'm on my phone, so it's a little different with this. On GE, they are a research facility mostly, and they are doing a decommission of one of their small research units. And they're also going to be building another one. So they would rarely have anything that they would be sending to you. They do send some low-level waste over to Energy Solutions on a regular basis. So this is something new for them that they're doing. And so I did issue them a permit, a petition.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kathy.
Uh-huh.
Any other comments or questions about item 5I? Yeah, it's L. Sorry, not I. Hearing none, I think we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the import application of GE Hitachi Energy Americas represented in item 5L on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. We've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes, so maybe now is a good time for a break. So the time is 11:23. So let's try to be back by 11:30, if that's at all possible. For those of you that are wondering, the restrooms are out this door and to the right, both women's and the men's. There is a cafeteria that's upstairs. You have to snake through a little bit to get to it if anyone needs coffee or water. But we will be back at approximately 11:30. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. It's 10:36 and we will get back to our agenda. The next item on our agenda is item number 6, which is the Rules Committee report, and I will turn it over to Commissioner Morris.
Thank you. As most of you know, we had forwarded to Texas Register 35 Texas Administrative Code 675.20, which is the definitions, and 675.21, which is the export rule. The changes that we made in these rules have been on our website for quite some time. It's my understanding that Mr. Raines tells me that since the preamble's been approved and everything's ready to go, it should be published in the October 14th Texas Register. At that point in time, we have 30 days to receive comments. It should be noted, we've only really received one comment on this rule since it was first presented. And we addressed those comments and made changes to those rules, hopefully to the satisfaction of the folks. So we're ready to move forward on that one. So please, if you have anything else to say about 0.20 or 0.21, please send those in officially and we will respond in writing to those comments. There is, everyone else knows, there is the 31 tax 675.24, which is the management rule. We will be bringing that up in a meeting in the near future for further discussion on that. Do any of you, do any of my fellow commissioners have any comments they would like to make on what the Rules Committee has been doing? The Rules Committee, by the way, is Mr. Hurley, Mr. Saudik, and Mr. Salzman, and myself, with support from Mr. Raines. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much, Commissioner Morris. With that, we will move on to item 7, which is the Capacity Committee report. And I will turn it over to Commissioner Edwards.
I don't have anything to report at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next item is item number 8, which is a Contingency Plan Committee report. And we'll see if Commissioner Mundy has anything to report on that.
No new activity since the last meeting.
All right, thank you very much, Jeff. With that, we are on to item number 9, which is the report from Mr. Carlson from Waste Control Specialist. So we'll invite him up to the desk and let him give us his report.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Dave Carlson from Waste Control Specialists. A couple of things I wanted to cover today in addition to the normal areas. I did want to address cures approved and accepted in the past. And I do have some history available of kind of what's been approved at times in the past and what's actually been accepted in the facility. Probably the largest amount of cures we've ever received in a year was in the 2018-2019 fiscal year. In that year, we received just over 200,000 cures, and that was based on 442,000 approved. So considering more was approved, we received less than half of what was approved in that particular year. The year when we actually had the highest approvals was in 2017-2018, and in that year, the commission approved 573,000 cures for disposal. And we actually in that year received about 100,000 cures. So just to give you an indication, historically, we see about 30% of the cures that are approved. So it's in that ballpark. Given that, and as we look in detail at the expected shipments for the 2022-2023 year, we don't expect to get close to the 275,000 cures based on what we know today. But certainly we'll be watching that closely as well as yourselves to ensure that we don't get close to that point, or if we do get close to that point, to have discussions with you. But given history, that's not really what we expect.
Were those contingent cures approved?
Yes, certainly, and certainly the majority of the cures that are received at the site are contingent cures because they're based on.
Yeah.
But there are occasions when we grant cures that are not contingent, and sometimes they still just don't show up, right? I mean, for whatever reason, logistics, monetary, whatever.
Absolutely. So, I want to address that a little bit too, and give, at least what I know for explanations of why that is. One reason is that when people apply, they tend to be conservative. They're applying at the beginning of the year. They probably don't have, or in many cases don't have full characterization or final characterization of what they're looking at. They may not have even generated the waste yet, and it could be generated later in the year. And so they have no characterization whatsoever. In that case, they have history that they would base that on and use, the best of that historical information to try to make an assessment of what they expect. They certainly don't want to go over and have to do an amendment because that's an additional step in the process. And I think at least in the past, commissioners have sometimes said, you may want to make sure that you request enough so that you don't go over. So that makes them, somewhat conservative when they do that. In addition to that conservatism, which I think we can all understand, what we often see is a change in plans. And so, just take a nuclear power plant for an example. They may, for some reason, decide to shift money around their budgets and not have money in a certain year to do certain activities, or beyond funds not available. They simply may not have staff. Somebody could resign, and it could be their shipper, or it could be someone important in the process, and then they would not be able to ship in that year because of that. So there's really several reasons and there may be some beyond what I've stated, but those are the typical reasons we see why we would not receive cures that might, be approved and projected. Final one I could say is we do have competition in the marketplace, and those folks, they may ship to those folks instead of shipping to us simply because they apply to dispose at WCS through the Compact Commission. Does not mean that they're obligated to do so. They may ship waste to one of our competitors. So just going into some aspects of my normal report. So for the current Texas fiscal year that begins on September 1st, and we run this through August 31st. Excuse me, I had that wrong. This is just for the month of August. So let me go to a different page here. Okay, current Texas fiscal year that runs to the end of August 2022. That's the year that's closed out at this point. In compact, we disposed of 9,298 cubic feet and just over 10,000 curies. Out of compact, we disposed of 26,942 cubic feet and just a bit over 100,000 curies. That compares to the prior fiscal year, where in compact, we disposed of a similar amount with more curies actually, and out of compact, we disposed of a bit less with about half the curies. Our totals to date through August of 2022, so the end of last fiscal year and the end of last month, we've disposed of 253,352 cubic feet, which is 3% of our licensed capacity, just a bit over half of our constructed capacity for the facility. We've disposed of 547,273 curies decayed, which is 14% of the licensed capacity of that facility. So clearly we are a long ways from being to capacity of that facility. In terms of quarterly payments, no change from July. Payments go out this week. The way that those are phased is we make quarterly payments to TCEQ and to Andrews County, and those go 30 days after the end of the previous quarter. So since the end of the previous quarter was the end of August, that payment is due to both TCEQ and Andrews at the end of September. So that's why those are coming out this week. In total, where we stand today is since inception about $68 million paid to TCEQ and $15.5 million to Andrews County, and those numbers will go up when we make the payments for those. And that is all I have to report. Oh, one more thing on those. Those payments that are made are carefully audited by us as they go in, but that's not the end of it. We do get audited by TCEQ, so they will go through and look at invoices and look at the payments that are made to TCEQ and to Andrews County in order to ensure that, we made no errors in calculation of what those surcharges are. So there is a process that's in place for not only us, but for our regulator to inspect those numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Any questions for Dave?
Can you say about what the quarterly payments are, the ones you?
Yeah, the ones we're paying this week, it's about $2.5 million to TCEQ and about $850,000 to Andrews County.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlson? Thank you.
Thank you.
So in relation to what Mr. Carlson was saying, and it was sort of brought up earlier in the meeting, based on the approvals that we made today and that we've made for this fiscal year, the commission has approved 89,587 actual curies. And then we've approved another 314,000 conditional curies. So the total between actual and conditional to date for this fiscal year is 403,587 curies.
Which obviously exceeds our 275 cap, but the
314, the majority of those are conditional carries.
Thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead, Dick.
Excuse me.
There just seems to be a complete imbalance between what we have approved and what is actually going to the site. I mean, the numbers almost don't relate to each other. It's so, I mean, you shot out those numbers fairly fast, and I'm not sure that I quite got it, but it seemed to me that it was a very low percentage of what we approved, like, I don't know, not single digits, but not very much in the double digits.
Right. If I take an average, the average of received versus approved is about 1/3.
Oh, okay, so it's that high.
It is, and the highest it's ever been is I think the first year of operation, the correlation was very close,
Very close.
5%. But since then, the highest it's been is about 50%. So we would normally expect more than 50% of what's approved to actually show up.
And based on what we've currently approved, both actual and contingent of a little over 400,000, if it's 50%, then it would be for the year about 200,000 if the statistics hold true.
Right. For our uses, we actually break it down further because we understand the shipments and the history for an individual plant and can make our own assessments on a shipment by shipment basis, what we expect. And that's why today, sitting here, I very much believe will be well within the 275,000. If that changes, I'll certainly let you know, as well as working with the customer.
When we look at these applications and they have these particular numbers, do you, by that time, have a pretty good idea of what is going to be shipped of the particular thing that is in the applications, or do you kind of have to wait and see?
So I'd say we're working with the customer at the same time you're seeing the import application. But the customer is looking more than a year ahead. Sometimes today they're looking about a year ahead. And there are priorities that crop up that are more important than, perhaps shipping that waste on a particular date. I think that's what we see. So they absolutely believe the numbers when they put them in and say this very much could happen. And they don't want to be caught short if it does happen. However, as I said, other priorities may come up, or, things could happen for the power plants that, shift their priorities and have to do something else.
I would think that it would put you in a difficult position if we had, say, approved X thousand feet of curies and you just didn't know the likelihood that some or all or some fraction of them would be.
So I would say we continuously communicate with those customers going forward to understand what their needs are, what their schedules are. We try to have a breakdown on a month-by-month basis, or even as we get close to it, day-by-day basis of what we expect to see shipped and ultimately arrive at the site. Our customers are good in terms of, providing that information as they know.
And Dick, my thought on this has always been is that if it ever starts to become a problem, what we do is we kind of turn the screw a little bit and go back and look retrospectively and say, you seem to be a big violator of this. You seem to be one that asks for a ton of curies and then uses 10% of them. So, we'll ask the generator to maybe tighten up their process a little bit, or if we start to come to the conclusion that they are intentionally asking for more curies than they should, that maybe we then take that into consideration in what we approve. And it has never been an issue to date, and so we haven't really crossed that bridge yet. But if we ever start feeling like we're getting close to the 275, and there's these issues, especially with the non-contingent curies, because those are permanent, so those are already granted. So if we start seeing that people are asking for, have multiple applications before us that ask for 5 or 10,000 curies and they're using 1 or 2, we might go back to them and have a discussion about why are you doing that, and how can we work with you to better refine your process to where you're not asking for a bunch of curies you never use. Because, and I'm sure this is a problem Dave would want to have, but if we start getting close to that 275, that will become very relevant, I think, because those people, this is probably the wrong term to use, but I want to make sure that no one's ever hoarding curies just for the sake of, far-fetched what ifs as opposed to legitimate needs. And so like I said, I don't think we're there yet, but if we ever got there, that would be kind of my idea of how we start to address it. And we've even done one year, and I can't remember when it was, but one year we did have a problem, and we asked we went out and asked a couple of generators to tell us if they were going to use the curies, and if not, if they would quote unquote release them, and they did. So I think we've gone through that process before.
I think some of what happens is every year people need to get an import permit. And they may have an idea of what will be generated that year, but they don't want to come back twice and ask a second or third time. So if I can imagine if somebody thought they were going to ship 100 widgets to us, they probably ask for 200, and that way they'll be covered, even if there's operational upsets or changes, or there's some backlog that they get some money released to clear out or whatever. And it's a simplification for them just to ask once for more than they need. But I don't know that for sure. It's just my guess.
I was thinking, running your plant, it would seem to me that you've got to use projections. You've got to have a pretty good idea of where you're headed. And that creates a kind of dysfunction in there if there's a big imbalance between what we, okay.
I think when you look historically, there's some consistency though, so that, I think we're okay from that perspective. And I would say that fuel pool cleanouts, which generate the majority of curies, are very complicated and logistically challenging events. And so, sometimes they just simply can't come together for a utility time frame that they had originally envisioned that. And so therefore those, large curie events can't slip.
Can you kind of quantify the impact that the dismantlement of Vermont Yankee has had on WCS and on your operations? I think that's kind of a vague question, but.
Yeah, I guess one way to look at it would be to go back to some of the numbers that I quoted. And, so looking at in-compact disposals, the volumes have been significantly driven by Vermont Yankee over the past couple of years. And so seeing this last fiscal year, about 9,000 cubic feet in compact and then 27,000 cubic feet or so out of compact, that gives you some indication of the significance of.
And what were the in compact versus out of compact curies again? I'm sorry.
It was 10,000 in compact and 102,000 out of compact.
My suspicion is the majority of that 10,000 in compact was probably Vermont Yankee too.
Yeah, I would expect so. It would be irradiated metals from in the reactor vessel. And in the prior year, the curies from in compact were quite a bit higher than that because they were removing other, some of the hotter items from inside the reactor vessel during 2020 or that 2020 to 2021 year. So yeah, I think as we come to closure on the highly radioactive items in Vermont Yankee, we'll see a drop off of that in the current fiscal year, and then certainly in the fiscal year after that. So it's been, what does that work out to? Maybe a quarter of what's come into that facility over a couple of years.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlson? Thank you. We can now move on to item 10 in our agenda, which is the chairman's report. First part of my report is always about communications with other compacts in the low-level forum. We have with us today Elise Peterson, who is the treasurer of the forum. We appreciate her attending. Elise does yeoman's work with the forum. She does a lot of different things for the forum, and she really is one of the reasons that the forum has gotten back to what we wanted it to be and the reason we rejoined. So we appreciate Elise's attendance and we appreciate all the work she does. Legislative updates. As all of you know, we are coming up to our legislative session in Texas, which begins in January of 23. We will be formulating our legislative package. Probably that will include talking to several of you about what we want to see or what we would like to ask the legislature to help us on. Some of those things may include issues related to the contingency report, It may also relate to some of the enforcement issues that we have been seeing in our lack of tools for enforcement. So we may be reaching out to many of you to kind of help formulate some of that. Lastly, we had a wonderful tour yesterday of the Vermont Yankee facility. Mike Pletcher is with us here today. He hosted that tour. We thank you very much, Mike, for all your hospitality. We can say I think unanimously, we can say that you give a much better tour than Carlson does. And you're a lot funnier and a lot better looking, but.
Thank you for all that.
But we do appreciate the tour. It was very informative. It is good to go see that. It is amazing the progress that has been made. In many ways, I think if someone from the public went, they may not even realize that was once a nuclear production facility. It's amazing how far they have gotten, and it is based on what Mike told us yesterday, that will be concluded by sometime in 24.
I would expect that most of the components and equipment will be removed sometime in 2025.
25.
I think people are hoping for the end of 2024, but I would imagine sometime early in 25, most of the components should be removed and they should start working on removing the buildings. What's left of them.
So we're on kind of the last leg, and it has been a lot of progress, and obviously everything that we saw yesterday was impressive. The process and the technology and know-how that goes into the dismantling of a nuclear reactor. It was very informative. So thank you very much for that. That, I believe, concludes the chairman's report. So we can move on to the executive director's report, and I'll turn it over to Stephen.
The first thing to update everyone on is the Sunset Review. We're still going through the Sunset Review process. The Sunset Commission will reach decisions in November. They were originally scheduled for October to make a decision about what recommendations to make regarding the Compact Commission. We're not expecting anything out of the ordinary other than a recommendation of how we will be included in what legislation may actually happen in the future. The current recommendation is that we will go through the Sunset Review again in 12 years when TCEQ is up for Sunset Review at the same time. But other than that, there were no recommendations for changes. If that does change and there are recommendations differently from that, I will certainly inform the commission if they do that. But that is expected on, I think, November 10th. Is that correct, Megan? The next date is when they will make their decisions. But we'll keep you. I think it's November. But we'll keep you updated if you have any questions about that. The TCEQ, we're kind of lumped in with TCEQ and how they're reviewing us together, but we are in fact separate agencies. So probably the biggest question is, will we be included in the legislation when we get into the TCEQ Sunset legislation? And we don't know the answer to that. But if you have any questions about Sunset, more than happy to answer them. The next was the office space. So we're still working on office space. Our lease will expire at the end of February. We have had one group come through that looked at maybe taking the space and leasing it themselves, but we're looking for office space and would love to have a conversation with you in the future about that. I think Chairman Hurley has visited with Commissioner Nyack, who's not here today, on playing a larger role and be involved with that. She kind of, I think, has shown an interest in helping us look for office space, but we would love to hear from you. I know I've talked with Vice Chairman Salzman and Commissioner Edwards and Chairman Hurley, obviously, if you have thoughts on that, on where we should go, would love to visit with you about that. But we have some time between now and February. We'll look to try and hopefully lower some costs for that as well. We did have a question that came up in our budget hearing about whether we could, in fact, utilize state office space. That came up from the budget committee on that. And that is a possibility. If the state of Texas would like for us to do that, we can pursue that if they choose to encourage us in that fashion. That would certainly save money for us if we lease office space, but state of Texas may not actually want to do that by the time we come to that decision. But we'll let you know if they are more strongly encouraging us utilizing state office space as opposed to commercial space. Have anybody any questions about that item? Yes, sir.
I simply want to be sure that it is clear to the state of Texas that this is an interstate compact. And I feel that we can't make that point enough because you are a big state and we're a little state. But we were both republics once. And I just think, you know, I think we should stake out our territory on that point as often as possible, frankly. When you're at it gets mushed together a little bit too much, I think, at times.
One of the things that came up was there was a question about whether we were required to have office space at all, but the compact very clearly states that we are required to have an office in the capital of the host state, which is Texas. So we will continue to have office space. I think they're looking more for budgetary concerns and less about the role of the state of Texas, but trying to save some cost. And if that can do that.
All I'm saying
we'll look at
is, you know, we've got to keep repeating it as often as possible. Because at times, I think we feel crowded in that regard. Basically, as I understand the breakdown, Texas, because they are taking the waste, have basically all the decision power over environmental and financial now that we've made our contribution. But I don't want anybody out there to think that we're just a Texas agency, or that we can be somehow rolled into a Texas agency.
I appreciate those comments. I appreciate you making them here in this forum too, and we will remind them of that as gently as we can. Speak up. I'm sorry if I'm not talking loud enough, I'll speak up more loudly. I appreciate you saying that, Commissioner Shadegg, and we will remind them of that as gently as we can.
Any other questions of Stephen before we move on? Our next item on the agenda is item 12, which is future meetings. Our next meeting is November 17th in Austin. I feel 99% confident we will have that meeting because we have some things we need to address. So sometimes that's the holiday meeting that gets canceled, but I feel confident this year we will have it.
What's the date again?
November 17th.
Okay.
The week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's the week before Thanksgiving. We did not want to get into the holidays. And then our next meeting after that is not until the new year on January 12th. Again, as I always say, we will never meet just for the sake of meeting. If there's no reason to meet on January 12th or on the next date, which is March 9th, we will cancel those meetings. There has been some discussion the last couple of days about potentially also taking our show on the road to Houston to allow everyone to possibly do a tour at South Texas. So many of us have gone to Comanche Peak, but I don't know that all of us have ever gone to the South Texas project to tour that facility. So we might also be looking at that in the future. That'll probably be later in 2023 if we do it. Obviously, at some point in 2023, we'll also want to go back to Andrews. And again, this time next year, we'll be coming back to Vermont. So for long range planning, that's the various places we may go. Any questions about future meetings? Okay. Before we adjourn, I want to once again thank the wonderful state of Vermont and Commissioner Shadegg for all his help in planning this meeting. We also want to thank the technical staff here at the Capitol who put together a wonderful technical meeting that has gone probably better than the last 3 or 4 meetings have gone. So we appreciate their technical assistance. We have obviously enjoyed our time here. We so appreciate Commissioner Tierney coming in and visiting with us. It is always nice to see her and hear her perspective because it's very valued. And we look forward to coming back to Vermont next year around the same time, and hopefully Commissioner Shadegg and Commissioner Bradford can make sure the leaves are turning that time. With that, we are through with our agenda and we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Oh, my God.